Hi, everyone. This is the long overdue and long overweighted, is that a word? Video on the Spanish American War that you've been promised for some time. So I know you already did the assignment where you had to do like the outline in the Spanish American War and then do a question afterwards. And many of you did that, so you'll know this stuff to some degree already. A lot of you didn't, so hopefully maybe I'll see some more of those uploaded to Classroom before class starts today, actually. But this is going to go just into the background, not really into the war, but also into a little bit more detail. But also, it will address some bigger themes that I want you guys to understand, connecting the Industrial Revolution to imperialism, like you did in World History last year, tying it into some other themes that are good thinking about, and hopefully we can discuss in class a little bit. So things to think about. We've covered now imperialism as a whole last year as a freshman, and now so far on the beginning of America's little imperial empire. We talked about Hawaii and also about the gains from the Spanish-American War. Why now? Why was now the period why America was expanding? Things to think about. The Industrial Revolution, which you learned about both last year and this year. Again, as we're making these new goods, both politicians in our country and definitely business people, they were paying more attention to countries that could be possible markets to sell these goods to. They saw what Europe was doing and how they were making markets, and they wanted their piece of the pie, so to speak. Then we have the Depression of 1893, and that really gave a sense of urgency to this idea. We have to get into these foreign markets before other countries do, and another depression hits. We need something to protect us there. Plus, think of the other great imperial powers. Think of England and France and Germany. Think more east. Think of Japan and Russia. They kept expanding their spheres of influence. And we're like, well, what if the U.S. gets shut out because those spheres of influence grows over? We don't want these other countries to get that far ahead of us where we can't have our own little sphere of influence. Think about the timing. Were we now old enough as a country to do things like this? You also have some politics involved. A theme throughout history, and America is no stranger to it, is having the us versus them mentality. So if we can say like, oh, Venezuela was being encroached by Britain. Well, start to live with this anti-British mentality. Like, why Britain? Venezuela should be our territory. And we'll learn more about that when we do like the Roosevelt corollary and things like that. There's also just a social support that our society thought this is something we should be doing. There's also an idea which I wanted to bring into you guys, the crisis of masculinity. I actually learned a lot about this last year in a graduate course. So if you want to read about it, I can give you some direction about this. And that's the idea that think of how the frontier shaped the American identity. Okay, so think of the rugged, independent individualism that came out of the frontier and the strength of the Americans that came as we moved west. Think of all, we learned about that. Louisiana Purchase, Manifest Destiny, so on and so forth. Well, according to the U.S. 1890 census, the frontier was there's no more frontier. We've gone all as west as we can go. What does that do to that American identity? Do we lose that masculine characteristic that the frontier gave us? People were afraid that Americans were now getting soft. The frontier's over. It's a few decades past the Civil War, and we haven't been like macho since then. The Industrial Revolution happens, and as much as we discuss that as being really hard work, a lot of people feared that being inside and working with machines really softened and feminized people. So what do we do to make sure we keep that masculine strength? So that's something we can discuss if you want as well. So the origins then of the war, Cuba Libre, the Free Cuba movement. So 1868, Spain is in Cuba, and Cuba does not like that fact that Spain is there. Their imperial government is corrupt, It's authoritarian. The people there really didn't feel like they had rights. A lot of the Spanish landowners were exploiting the Cubans, and they couldn't really do much about it because those people had guns, and the Spanish military supported these landowners. Now, this is just a few years after our Civil War. So we're worried about Reconstruction. We had tons of obstacles that we had lots of trouble trying to get over. So we weren't really getting involved, even though we did defend the Cuban sort of requests. Now let's go forward in time a little bit. It's 1895. The Cuban rebels are like, right, we need to find a new strategy to deal with this. So in order to get rid of the Spanish, let's cut off why or how they make a profit off of us. Let's burn their fields. And they did. And Spain responded by sending General Weyler. Oh gosh, I'm going long here, aren't I? And he instituted this concentration policy. And that was the people in Cuba were put into these concentration camps. And between 100,000 to 400,000 people died as a result of them from hunger and disease. They say died, they were really killed from this policy, right? People were outraged about this. And I think this is cut off already. Can't do these on Chromebooks. So maybe I'll pick up a part 2 later. Part 2 later about that. I usually use my Mac, but I think my kids took my charger from Bring Your Kids to Work Day.